Welcome to the Livin'Sky podcast, a show about raising connected, resilient kids in a world that often forgets what they need most. I'm Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist, holistic feeding specialist, and a mom, here to help you understand your child's body, behavior, and biology in a whole new way. Each episode brings you simple, practical tools to support healthy eating, development, and family connection without the overwhelm. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Livin'Sky podcast. I'm Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist and a holistic feeding specialist, and I help moms understand what's really driving their child's picky eating so meal times can feel calmer, more connected, and actually work. If you are more of a natural-minded mama who likes to seek holistic solutions and are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by meal times, you're definitely in the right place. If your child lives on pasta, crackers, fruit, and snacks, and tends to refuse meats, eggs, or anything with protein, this episode is for you because this is one of the most common patterns that I see. Also, it's one of the most misunderstood. Most parents are told that picky eating is just picky eating, that it's a phase, or that their child just needs more exposure or a little more push, or that they're going to grow out of it. And sometimes that happens, but if this goes on for multiple weeks and multiple months, and they're getting older and they're getting a little bit more set in their ways, then it's probably not just a phase. But when a child consistently only eats carbs and refuses protein, there's usually something much deeper going on. And once you understand that, everything starts to shift. So let's zoom out for a second, because picky eating is not the problem. It's actually a signal. It's a signal that something else is happening inside of their bodies, that there is a root cause for this. It's just a symptom. Picky eating is not a diagnosis, and I feel like I say that every single day, multiple times a day, because it's just so true. When we treat picky eating as a diagnosis, where we focus on picky eating as the main problem, and when we focus on the foods that the child's eating, that's when we completely miss what's going on. It's kind of like getting a check engine light on your dashboard in your car and you completely ignoring it and deciding to keep driving, right? It's kind of like that when it comes to treating picky eating as a behavior, because it is just a signal. And when a child is relying heavily on carbs, their body is just choosing what feels safest and easiest at the moment, right? There's many underlying causes that could be potentially the reason for this. And it's just so important to look under the hood, look at what's really going on with the car, with the engine, to see why we're having trouble driving. So let's talk about this a little bit. Here are a few main reasons why this might be happening to your child. The first one is oral motor skills. These are the skills they have with their mouth muscles, with their tongue, with their jaw. If anything is off there, if, for example, they're unable to chew properly because maybe their muscles are a little bit weak, if they're unable to chew thoroughly because they get tired, or so maybe they're swallowing prematurely, if they're holding on to food for a little bit too long, these are all red flags. And protein foods are typically feeling harder because when you're chewing steak, it takes skill, it takes time, it takes strength. And if your child doesn't have that when it comes to chewing, then they're probably going to refuse protein foods because they really require more chewing, more coordination, and more strength. So if your child has low muscle tone, they get tired when chewing, maybe they're just too distracted, or they haven't fully developed those skills yet, these foods can feel overwhelming. And over time, when they're exposed to them time and time again, they might start to refuse them because they're going to associate these foods with extra work, maybe as a threat, because maybe last time they didn't chew enough, they tried to swallow and they gagged, or maybe they're choked. Something happened where they can now have anxiety around it. And carbs like pasta, crackers, bread, they break down very quickly. They break down very easily. So maybe that's why your child might be gravitating towards these foods. They're just easier. They're predictable. They're always the same. Every single time a child will get a bite of a cracker that comes from a box, it's going to be the same exact bite. Meanwhile, if you are serving your child a ribeye or any type of meat, it's going to be different, a little bit different at least every single time. Even the same kind of steak can be different, right? Because maybe you have a vein or something in that steak. Maybe you have a fatty part that's a little bit harder to break down or easier. Maybe the muscle meat is harder. Whatever it is, it's unpredictable. And for children who have oral skills deficits, that's going to be affecting their willingness to continue eating these foods. So your child will gravitate towards something that feels manageable, predictable, and safe. Children are always looking for safety every time that they eat. We do too. When we feel uncertain about some foods, we're probably not going to be excited about trying them or having them, right? That's just human nature. So this is something to definitely watch if you think that your child might be having some issues in this area. And if you do feel like your child is struggling with their oral skills, I would look for a therapist in the area, whether it's a speech language pathologist or an occupational therapist who has experience with feeding and oral motor skills, and do an evaluation with them because they'll be able to really help you to manage this more professionally. The second reason why your child might be choosing carbs over protein is sensory sensitivities. This is a big one because, again, protein foods are often less predictable. A piece of chicken can feel dry, stringy, uneven. Eggs can feel too soft or too mixed, and the texture is different almost every single time. And for kids who have sensory sensitivities, these texture differences can feel like a huge deal. Something that can feel pretty neutral to us because we don't have sensory sensitivities can feel huge to a child with sensory sensitivities because that unpredictability can feel uncomfortable. It can even feel threatening sometimes, right? Because when they have sensory sensitivities, their senses are feeling a little bit stronger or a little bit lesser. Is that right? A little bit lesser. Maybe they're not as strong, right? Because they can be hypersensitive or they can be hyposensitive, right? And hyposensitive meaning that they don't have enough feedback for whatever is driving these sensitivities. So they might be sensory seeking. So maybe that's the child that will overstuff their mouth. Maybe this is the child that is going to be a very fast eater. Maybe this is the child that is constantly bumping into you as they're waiting in line for ice cream because they're seeking this something sensory wise to help their body center. Or maybe they are hypersensitive, where every single little bump on a food or textural difference can feel extreme. So that's why, again, carbs are consistent. They feel the same every single time. So that's why these kids typically don't have issues with eating carbs, and that's what they crave. That consistency feels safe, and it feels predictable, and it feels calming, and it feels good. So kids who have these sensory sensitivities will crave carbs over those unpredictable foods. The third thing that could be driving your child's carbs obsession is their nervous system. If your child is in a more stressed mode or a dysregulated state in their body is not an ideal place for exploring new or more complex foods because they're essentially on the edge all the time. And sometimes that can feel kind of silly, right? Because if your child is young, why would they be stressed? They're just being kids. But our kids are so much more sensitive, more and more sensitive because of how dysregulated our world is and how toxic it is right now. Unfortunately, kids and us as well, we come in contact with about 80,000 chemicals every single day. So our gut health is suffering. Our nervous system is suffering. We just do not have the bandwidth or the ability to process things as well as we used to when the world was a little bit less toxic. And I don't want to sound extreme here, but that's just what's happening. Our kids are sicker and sicker, and so are the adults. And unfortunately, that is driving a lot of nervous system dysregulation. And when our kids eat carbs, they provide quick energy, right? They give them a boost. They give them a boost in their sugar levels. It gives them quick energy. They're just so much easier to process. They make them feel good and they help them regulate, right? For at least a short period of time. So the body naturally leans towards them. It craves it. So because they want that boost in dopamine, it wants that oxytocin release. It wants that feeling of being safe. This is also why mealtime stress often makes picky eating worse. When the table is a stressful environment, then those carb cravings are going to be even higher for kids. Now, the fourth thing is biology and gut health. From a biology informed perspective, we can look at things like blood sugar patterns. If your child eats a lot of carbs and they have these blood sugar spikes, it feels really good when they're getting that spike, but because once it goes down, then their body feels like it's crashing. So it's naturally craving more carbs to pick it back up. And this is what happens, unfortunately, in a lot of kids right now because we're just allowing them to have a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar, especially at breakfast. In my opinion, breakfast should always be savory as much as possible because then it really helps us to regulate our blood sugar patterns throughout the day. But unfortunately, a lot of kids don't get that opportunity because of their cravings and because of their picky eating tendencies. So it's just kind of like a vicious cycle. Then the gut balance. When we have leaky gut, when we have bacterial overgrowth, where we have a lot of the bad guys in our gut, a lot of these bacteria, they thrive on carby and sugary foods. That's what they want to survive because remember, we don't actually eat our food. Our kids don't eat their foods. It's the bacteria that eats and digests that food, and we only get the byproduct of it. Right? So that's why we have these unusual cravings when our gut health is out of balance. And it's also overall nourishment. When we are nutrient depleted, we are unfortunately not at our best when it comes to digestion and our biology and function in general. So we develop these unusual cravings for carbs and for things that are going to give us quick energy wins. If those systems are off, the body may crave quick energy foods. And that's exactly what carbs is, right? Or what carbs are. And that's why oftentimes it just turns into this vicious cycle, this catch 22, because the child is craving carbs and it's hard to get out of these cravings. So they're eating a lot of carbs and then they're not getting the nutrients that they need in their diet. So they're nutrient depleted and these like cravings get more frequent, more severe, and unfortunately, I'm a huge believer that light is one of the most powerful medicines for our kids and for us. That's why I love Bon Charge. Their blue light blocking glasses, red light therapy devices, and many other products are designed to support your circadian rhythm and help your family sleep and feel better naturally. In our modern world of screens and artificial light, these small shifts make a big difference. Calmer evenings, deep sleep, better focus, and happier moods. I use Bon Charge products every single day, and even my son has his own pair of blue light blocking glasses for evening story time. You can check out all their products at boncharge.com and use code LENAL to save 15% off your purchase. They go into this like repetitive pattern. So now I want to talk about why pressure doesn't work, right? We talked about what causing all these carb obsessions. And this is why if you try to pressure your child, even if it's gentle, to shift into something else, it's probably not going to work. Because when you start to notice this pattern, this carb obsession, these constant carb cravings, it makes sense that you might try to encourage more protein, of course. And you might say things like, just take just one bite for mama. I get it. This is just so good for you. Just take a bite. You need to eat this. Sometimes we get stern and we try to push them. And I totally understand that because I've tried it on my son too. I've tried it for a long time, tried all these behavioral techniques that I learned in school, but It didn't work for me either. Then I also tried to withhold just snacks until he eats dinner. And that was the best one, I would say, out of the three, because I do think the snacking culture is an issue. And I do think that the less snacks, the better for the child, but that might take time. But here's what happens. Pressure creates more stress because when we're pressuring our child, they go into fight or flight. That puts us into our sympathetic system, not into our rest and digest mode. This is fight or flight. The nervous system is in hyper focus mode. It is taking over. So then the child is not going to be craving proteins and nourishing foods and healthy fats. They're going to be craving something that feels safe and predictable, and it's going to give them a quick energy win. So when that happens, your child becomes even less able to eat these harder foods. So instead of expanding their diet, it actually makes them more rigid. And this is not about doing anything wrong because everything you're doing is so well-meaning and comes from a place of love. It's just not something that you probably heard about before. It's really understanding. It's really about understanding how the body works and working with it instead of against it, right? So let's talk about what to do instead, because I'm sure you want to know what actually helps. And I'm definitely going to break it down for you. So this is where we focus on small, doable shifts, something that is manageable for you and your child, because you're probably overwhelmed by all this, but you want to help your child. So I think that something that feels more approachable and doable is definitely going to help you. And it's not going to be a full overhaul of your entire life and eating routine. So the first thing you're going to do is start with safety. So before focusing on what your child eats, before looking at the plate, before looking at the mealtime, I want you to think about how mealtimes feel. Are they calm? Are they predictable? Or is there tension and pressure? What are small things you can do to bring in more calm and peace into your meal times? Because your goal is to create an environment where your child feels safe enough to explore. Even before they eat something new or before they try the protein, I want you to think about what feels safe enough for them to explore. That is always step one. The second thing is using bridge foods. Instead of jumping from crackers to steak, think in steps. This is what we call professionally food chaining. If your child eats pasta, keep serving the pasta. Then slowly introduce changes. Maybe you add a little bit of butter, which is a healthy fat. Maybe you put the butter at the bottom of the plate so it doesn't touch the noodles yet, depending on what they can actually accept. Maybe it's olive oil, something that's a little bit more nourishing. Maybe you place a small amount of ground chicken or shredded chicken on the plate, separate, with no pressure to eat it. Maybe that food can't touch the pasta yet, and that's fine. But maybe eating pasta with a little piece of chicken on the side is something that they can handle. You're building familiarity, not forcing change. You don't want to change their meal completely, where instead of the pasta they have grown to love and feel safe with, you're taking it away and serving them steak and mashed potatoes. You want it to be little changes over time so it feels really safe and predictable. Then the third thing you're going to do is support oral skills. You can support chewing and strength in really natural ways. You can start to offer slightly more challenging foods over time, help them to remind them to chew with their back teeth, with their molars, right? We want to chew in circles. This is the rotary chew that adults have. Let your child practice, give them time. This is something that they're learning developmentally. It's a milestone. Feeding and eating is a milestone. Kids learn how to do it safely over time. And if something didn't happen in those milestones, maybe they skipped a step or maybe they get stuck somewhere, they may need help. It's the same with walking. It's the same with writing. It's the same with reading. They might need support. So, and sometimes, if they are having issues with their oral motor skills, this may take time. It may take repetition. Definitely not pressure, just support, support, support. And this is something that I definitely recommend you outsource if you're having a hard time and if you really predict your child is having a lot of issues with their oral skills, because you want to make sure you're seeing a professional so that they can eat safely. So again, that would be a speech pathologist who is very versed in this or an occupational therapist. And then the fourth thing that you can do is just create a gentle structure. Kids really thrive on routine. They love structure. So if your child is grazing all day, they might not come to meals hungry. If they're snacking and they just had a snack 30 minutes ago, maybe they're going to show up for your meal and they're not going to be hungry for what you cooked. So having a simple rhythm really helps. Meals and snacks should be at predictable times. Actually, it's really supportive to our body and biology when we eat at the same time every day as much as we can. And we touched on this briefly, but I really want to encourage you to not let your child snack as much because snacks equals carbs, of course. And then we're going to be going into that vicious cycle of craving the carbs, but also it's really going to affect their cravings and their appetite. So I know we are taught that we're supposed to do 2 snacks and 3 meals, but I don't think that's necessarily important unless your child has a caloric deficit or you have concerns with their weight and they're falling off the growth chart, then maybe having the 5 meals is really important. But for most kids, it's really getting in the way of them having an appetite for dinner. So I would say offer them balanced options without pressure and really, really focus on the 3 big meals. And then if they're really starving and hungry, of course, a small snack, which I would also try to make balanced as much as possible. So if they like yogurt, make sure it's a good quality yogurt that's A2 milk and without sugar. We don't want too much sugar. 25 grams a day is max for most kids, and I wouldn't introduce it before the age of 2 because it's important for our gut and our health in general to minimize it. But that's going to support both appetite and regulation for your child so they can come to the table more open to trying new things and more hungry for real food. And then the fifth thing I want to talk about is focusing on exposure. Sometimes your child is just not ready to eat the food right away. Sometimes just seeing it, touching it, having it on their plate, that's all they can handle, and that's fine. That absolutely counts. Remember, kids learn when they're curious, when when they feel safe, when they feel like they're in a supportive environment and they're not in a fight or flight state, right? So having this exposure, maybe if you don't want to just make them their own plate every single day, I love family style meals where you have kind of like tapa style meals. So maybe they'll be the ones to serve you your steak or your chicken or your fish, whatever it is. Maybe they're the ones that's how you expose them first. That's how you give them control, a big sense of control. And maybe that's what they need before they're ready to try something. This is how the brain and body build familiarity and trust. So giving them the time and space to do it is definitely key. So what this looks like in real life, let's make this practical. If your child currently eats plain pasta every night, instead of trying to get them to eat chicken right away, maybe you're going to continue serving the pasta so they feel safe. Add a little butter at the bottom of their plate or olive oil. Maybe place some shredded chicken on the plate next to them. Maybe ground chicken if that's what they like. Something that's a little bit easier to chew. I probably wouldn't start with steak because that's the hardest thing to chew, but maybe fish. Fish is really easy. Then keep the environment calm, supportive, don't pressure them, and don't also get super excited when they're eating because that can also feel like pressure to a child because they need to please you. So just make it a regular thing. It's just a meal. And over time, that exposure builds familiarity and trust and safety. And that then leads to expansion and eating more foods. So if your child keeps coming back to this carb heavy pattern, it usually means we need to support more than just the food. This is where a whole child approach matters because we're looking at their body, their development, their nervous system, their environment, their relationship with food. This is not about forcing protein. This is about helping your child feel safe, capable, and supported. And when those pieces are in place, expansion happens much more naturally. If this is something you're seeing with your child, I want you to know this. You're not behind and your child is not broken. They're communicating something. And once you understand what it is, you can respond in a way that actually helps. If you want help figuring out what is driving your child's picky eating, I created the Picky Eating Root Cause Quiz. It will help you understand what to focus on first so you're not guessing. You can find that link in the show notes. Also, I've been hosting a Beyond Picky Eating workshop every single month where I really go deeper into that root cause of what's causing picky eating and what you can do at home. It's an hour-long workshop, and I'm offering it monthly, and you can find that at linalivinsky.com/workshop, where I'll be with you live, and you can ask me any questions that come up for you. And I'm hosting it actually a little bit later this month because I have noticed that 6 p.m. Eastern is kind of a hard time for busy moms to get to a workshop. Next month, rather, is going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and I'm hoping that that time is going to be much better for moms. So again, that's linalivinsky.com/workshop, and you can find the picky eating root cause quiz in the show notes. If you found this information helpful, please share with another mom who's overwhelmed by picky eating because it's so important to find that support that is truly going to move the needle and not focus on the food on the plate. As always, I'm so glad you're here. I'm sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have, please leave us a 5-star review. It means the world to me, and it's really helping other moms to discover us as well. All right. See you next week. Bye for now. Thanks so much for listening to the Livin'Sky podcast. If this episode resonated, please leave a quick 5-star review or share it with another parent who'd love it too. It really helps more families find the support that they need. And don't forget to join my newsletter at linalivinsky.com for more tips and free guides. Sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. See you next time.